Hi, Gonzalo. Welcome to Drag and Drop.
Hey, Feroz, great to be here. Thank you.
A pleasure to have you on. Thank you for, agreeing to come as a guest. I know, um, we haven't spoke much in the past, but I've seen you on the stage many times in the last kind of 12 months, everywhere I go. So, you've been definitely key to where things are kind of moving within OutSystems. But it'd be good to, I know you've had a really interesting journey with kind of, you were at OutSystems, you left, you've come back. So it'd be good to kind of start with a bit of an introduction to yourself, but also even what motivated you to come back.
Yeah. Well, so I was here originally since 2008. At the time, I was building enterprise software for telecommunication companies, for banks, and so on. And I joined OutSystems, and I was actually building software for insurance companies and for financial services companies. So I've been a heavy user of the platform. I managed R&D. So at the time, there was no cloud. We actually created the first cloud trial version. So I was always very into product itself, how the product is built, what are the fundamental pieces that we have there. And I managed product management for, I don't know, over a decade. So I left to build my own company. This was kind of like a month before COVID. We incorporated like 20 days before COVID.
Yeah.
So the original idea changed pretty rapidly. But we adapted. We ended up building a platform, a solution with OutSystems. So I had the opportunity to also be a customer of OutSystems. And then, so we were operating at the marketing and sales B2B type of software, and AI came along pretty nicely. We're doing next best action type of predictive support for marketing and sales, and I got more and more interested in AI, and actually what I felt we were missing at the time was really like this good understanding of what is the business data, what are the business concepts that organization have in place, where we can really apply AI on, and I focused a lot on that. And coming back to OutSystems was really to leverage the opportunity that we have to build on top of everything that was built over the last 25 years. And to bring this leverage to every organization. So a lot of the fundamental pieces that we have are at the core of AI, and I believe this is the best opportunity to leverage what we have, to be closer to not only developers but also to businesses that want to transform with AI and leverage that. So massive opportunity, massive challenge as well. In these times that are running, but that excites me, that got me back to working with our customers that are always very innovative and willing to experiment and do more.
Yeah. And obviously, AI is the conversation, right? It's been for a while now. I think we're past hype stage, right? It's very much kind of people are trying to build, learn. It's forever changing, with all these leaders being past this kind of hype phase. What do you think's recently changed? Enterprises are really thinking about adoption.
Yeah. So I think as we grow adoption, we start facing some initial challenges or understanding what will be the challenges of scale, right? And scale, especially in an organization. One thing is me doing something for myself, right? But in an organization where a lot of the context, the data is shared, the policies are pervasive, but also fragmented everywhere. Yeah, you get a lot of those problems of fragmentation and scale. I think we're also seeing with the advance of AI the shift from what it means, what AI means as a technology to a business, to the actual work that it can do for the business, right? So the leverage is also much greater. AI models are much better nowadays. Agentic frameworks, agentic tools can orchestrate how AI works with data and so on much better. So there's also this shift of AI being able to do a lot more, But at the same time, as we try to scale, we face some of these challenges of how do we keep control, how do we keep accountability, how do we keep security, and so on. So I think it's the shift has changed from seeing how with AI we can do things faster, build things in a more easily fashion. So less focus about speed and ability and more focus on, okay, how do we scale? How do we govern? How do we ensure that we don't introduce new risks into our business? Because the capability is pretty much there.
And you're very close to customers and prospects, and you're involved in all these conversations. Where do you see that most organizations are struggling with AI moving from experimentation to more mission critical production systems?
Yeah. So the core initial problem is really the fragmentation of data that is used to build these agentic systems, right? So when we talk about agentic AI, it's not really just a chatbot that uses the LLM to infer or to come up with some summarization. We need to build agentic systems that need to sit on top of existing data sources that you already have, that need to be embedded into workflows or business processes that you already have, that you're already doing nowadays. You need to have accountability on decisions that are suggested by AI, right? And you need to secure the data and the systems that the agents access, right? Either to fetch data, to ground the agents in that data, or to actually act upon the systems when they are making some actions. So doing that without kind of like a unified platform where you can basically ground the agents in existing data, in existing systems of record, documents, but also relational databases, so that you can make the agent have a decision be made at runtime. But also, how do you bring agents into this user interfaces or workflows that human users already use nowadays, right? So getting that all linked in a kind of like a nervous spine that links all of that, and that allows the agent to maximize its accuracy, its performance. It's really hard. If you just look at agentic AI as a new technology being done with a new tool, it's the getting that unified perspective is one of the biggest struggles. I think another struggle is really on, okay, we're talking about one agent and how you get one agent to do that. Now, imagine this when you have 5 agents that work together, or that need to work with each other to do a unit of work. Imagine when you have 100 agents or 1,000 agents, as I've heard the other day, this retail company having already in place, where you have different business rules, different pieces of data that are operating within these agents across multiple business units, right? Getting that consolidated in a system that you can actually manage, right? That you can operate, that supports your business. It's really hard. So all the governance, all the orchestration as well, but the governance, the monitoring, the security controls that you need to put there, it's a really struggle if you're thinking about mission critical agentic systems, of course.
Yeah, and obviously many organizations are thinking about agentic AI, where to start, what to do, right? And obviously it introduces systems that can act autonomously, right? And when you're speaking to these leaders, for them, what's the biggest risk and what's kind of holding them back on kind of moving ahead?
Yeah. So I think the risk, there's a security risk that is very concrete, right? So it's very easy to hack a prompt of an agent, for instance, right? I was speaking to a customer the other day, and I was asking them, are you really sure that the chatbot that you have on your portal, if I say that I'm the grandson of Cristiano Ronaldo and my grandfather is kind of like having a problem that I really need to answer, that it won't act on top of the system as being Cristiano Ronaldo trying to fulfill my goal as a user. You can never be 100% certain of that. So you can put guardrails, you can put other ways to control the agents and to avoid prompt injection and so on. But that security cannot be handed over to AI, right? That security protection needs to be in your system. That's why I always think that this is not really AI, agentic AI in particular. It's not something that you build in a lab. It's not something that you build in isolation, because it's something that you architect into the system. You need to put that security in your data, in your systems, and never let the AI impersonate someone else, for instance, or impersonate some other process, or act as if it was acting as another process. So the security is really one of the struggles. The other one that we're starting to see now with more and more adoption is with how do you ensure the performance of the system as the system evolves. So agents, as much as we would like, they're not completely self-sufficient, and they won't evolve on their own, right? You won't get it right the first time. It's something that you need to keep on evaluating how they answer, how they process data, how they reason over data. So you need to keep monitoring that agent. Now, we see new models coming along every week. We see, and we know kind of like the big vendor models, they're very good, but there's thousands of specialized models, small language models that might even be a better fit for your particular use case, right? There are models that have much less cost than the best model for everything, right? The most generalistic model. So you do want to have that leverage and that ability to, one, keep updating those models to make sure that your agent keeps performing. Keep changing your agents to make sure that they evolve to new micro use cases or exceptions. And you want to be able to leverage other models that might be either more cost efficient for the value that they create, or even more specialized for the task that that particular agent is doing. Switching models, it's basically kind of like the piece of the equation that creates more risk into the system. So you cannot basically change a model in let's say a loan origination system and hope that the loan origination underwriting process is or the credit underwriting process is still stable and performing, right? So there's a lot of effort being put into how do you guarantee the performance of the model as you experiment with new models, as you evolve or upgrade to the new model versions, and making sure that they are still secure and so on. So guardrails, evals are really a critical piece of the equation.
Yeah. And with why do you think traditional governance models start to break down, once AI enters the picture? And, what do you think really needs to exist at a platform level before leaders are comfortable running these agentic systems?
Yeah. So agentic AI systems are undeterministic or probabilistic by default, right? So AI is going to operate on top of probabilities, and the models are going to do the same. On the other hand, for the system to have more and more value, if you want to encode more value into the system, the way you do it is by giving the agents more autonomy, right? And that's kind of like opposite sides of the scale, right? If you give it more autonomy, you don't know exactly how it is going to perform. And yes, you can monitor and you can control and you can fine tune and so on, but still you lose that predictability, that accuracy that the agent gets. On the other hand, if you restrict it from doing that, you get a lot less value. So kind of like the governance that you need to put in place is also kind of like understanding what's the best of deterministic, for instance, workflows that business processes that really map to how your company operates. This is how we operate. This is our process, right? And we know how that process goes. We have some business rules that have been encoded, I don't know, throughout the 20 years that we've been
Yeah.
operating. They're pretty solid. They're very valuable, right? So you want to have that deterministic encoding of the business process and bring in agents, yes, autonomous with enough flexibility while having the security in place to call the different tools that they need to fulfill a goal. But as a system thinker, as you design your business, you want to have some of that in deterministic workflows. And the governance that companies need to put in place, part of it goes there. The other part is governance as applied to development, right? So we're talking about business agents so far,
Yeah.
but as you have agents that can now create systems, right? You can build a system with an agent that codes your system. The governance also changes a lot because you're no longer managing code that you produce yourself. You're managing systems that agents are generating and changing, right? So how you govern your systems shifts a lot more to what should we be doing rather than how we do it, right? So that's the two angles of governance that are being very much affected in organizations that we speak to.
Yeah. And speaking of governance, how real is the risk of, shadow AI, and, what's the wrong way or right way that, the leaders should be responding to that?
Yeah. So shadow AI, I think it depends a lot on the use cases that people want to be enabled to fulfill, right? So just like software development, we've always had the business willing to solve their own problem. One, because sometimes they understand it better than a developer, right? They understand the problem better. And second, because IT teams sometimes didn't have the agility, didn't have the capacity to say, yes, we can do it, and we do it in a governed, centralized manner, and so on. And that sometimes led to shadow IT, what we used to call shadow IT,
Yeah.
right? With AI, I think it's relatively the same. So one is the capabilities there even more than ever before for anybody to build software, for anybody to build their own agents. But IT does need to still have a central role in making sure that systems can be accessed securely, that any agent that is built, any AI that is created to do something, has specific guardrails in place, has specific compliance rules in place. For instance, does not access systems that either the user that AI is running on behalf of does not have access, or doesn't see documents that that person does not have access to. And even though this seems like conceptually easy, there are not a lot of systems in place yet that ensure all of this at a centralized fashion for ITs to enable the edges of the organization. So that's the problem with shadow AI, is that if you do it without that governance in place, you're gonna get right into those security potential issues, or even like the lack of consistency, upgradability problems, because at some point all of these different agents are going to need to be upgraded, and what's going to happen? The new model might perform completely different, and you get even unforeseen risks. So to a point, the role of IT needs to evolve a little bit to understand, okay, now we have not only a new technology, but also new users in our landscape that are these AI agents that we need to govern as if they were human users doing their own stuff over our systems, right? So the governance needs to be there for people to adopt AI at scale.
And at board level, there's much kind of tougher questions now around AI spend, and what separates these AI initiatives that survive these budget cycles and the ones that just disappear.
Right. So I think we've seen already kind of like the acceleration of that. Okay, let's spend money on AI because it's going to give us results. In the last part of last year, like we've been talking to customers and hearing a lot more that we need to understand what's going to be the ROI of that investment, which goes back to the traditional things that were being done to spend money in technology, right? It's ROI driven. So I I see it a lot starting there, and the same applies, for instance, for AI assisted development, right?
Yeah.
So early this year, we've seen kind of like the rise of agentic development with Cloud Code and the likes, right? And this idea that software as a service is dead, and no one is going to buy any more software because we can always build our software, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, companies, in particular, organizations, enterprises, they do the math of the cost of not only creating that software, but maintaining that software and operating that software. So if you apply ROI to those initiatives, it's really looking into what is the cost of risk versus what is the cost of building it myself, right? So eventually the cost of managing risk, making sure that it does what I need, but I can manage it efficiently and so on, still applies not only to traditional software, but also to agents that you build and how you apply AI, right? So it always starts with, is this is is this going to be relevant for our business? Is this going to save costs? Is this going to allow us to provide a better customer experience and eventually get more revenue? Is this going to reduce our risk and our operating expenses in the long run? If so, then it makes sense to apply AI because it's a really, really disruptive way to get to those outcomes. But again, they really start with the outcomes, not just with let's try AI.
Yeah, yeah. And all over the internet, LinkedIn, everywhere, every business is talking about AI, right? There's all these theories about we can do this, we'll achieve this, right? But the most important thing is the reality side of things, right? So is there any AI use cases, that you can speak about that are delivering measurable ROI for your customers versus obviously it's great to obviously, like I said, put nice pictures on and the marketing side of things, but the real kind of use cases.
Yeah. So I like to I like to think of AI kind of like the last frontier of digital automation. So there were we were already building systems to automate and to bring value to our business, right? But there were some things that we could not automate because they were either too costly to build, like all the variations, or too costly because we would have to put a lot of people doing something. And AI really enables that. When we get to use cases, we usually think about them as three. So one is kind of like employee productivity. Imagine like research that I used to do, and now I can get an agent to do it for me, to spend that time scanning different sources, collecting different pieces of data, understanding that data. Traditional employee productivity use cases now have agents that can do a lot of the heavy lifting of the work. Then core operations. So the core business process that we have. I mentioned loan origination, the credit underwriting, handling a claim and deciding on a claim. For instance, predictive maintenance in manufacturing or operations. So those things that usually require a human decision or a good understanding of a lot of data in a given core business process, they're also a very good use case where you get immediate ROI because it's at the core, at the heart of your business. And the third one is around customer experience, right? So I was talking to a marketing team the other day from one of my customers. And in marketing, you usually think about personas, right? So we have persona A, B, and C. And that is kind of like an artificial construct, because we were always limited by the ability to create thousands of different variations for each individual user that we have. And that is gone now with AI. So you can hyper personalize your customer experience to the individual. You can generate a value proposition on the fly. You can generate a web page or an offer that fits that particular individual, because you can get an AI agent to optimize particularly for that. That was never possible before. It is possible now, and it's one of the things that gets you biggest leverage for customer experience. So 3 major use cases: employee productivity, core systems and core operation automation, and customer experience, hyper-personalization. Usually it goes down to 3 patterns in Agentic. One is around document processing. So we see a lot of immediate impact if you can automate processing different documents, turning unstructured data into structured data to operate, to get it to operate over systems that you already have. The second one is decisions recommendations. So it's when an agent looks into a lot of data and infers something that should be done. Now, the critical point here is that in an organization, usually you cannot get the AI agent to be accountable for the decision. You still need a human, a department, someone to be responsible or accountable for that decision. So it's usually something that shows up in the middle of a workflow where you get the human in the loop to do the final sign off of the decision. And the third pattern is personalization. So content generation used a lot in marketing, but for instance, generating an email to a customer that replies with the understanding of their exact history, what they've done, what they need right now, solving a particular support problem in that very specific instance. So this hyper-personalization and content generation is kind of like the third pattern. So documents, decisions, and personalization are kind of like the core constructs that then you apply to the 3 major use cases in your business.
And there's a lot of excitement around prompt driven, or call it vibe coding, at the moment, right? A lot of people are talking about it. I'm keen to get your kind of opinion on, is this a genuine shift in how enterprise systems will be built, or is it more of a short-term productivity illusion? And even when you're speaking to customers, is this something that is being discussed and brought into the conversation?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, independently of the term vibe coding or agentic development or AI native development, we do, and I do personally believe that this is one of the major use cases, if you want to call it as a use case, where generative AI can have a massive impact, and specifically agentic AI can have a massive impact. So what we've seen right now, and we're hearing from customers as well, is that agents like Claude Code, like Mentor, like all those sort of development agents, they not only accelerate development because they can basically have a pretty good understanding of the intents of the developer, the user, and then turning that into software. So they accelerate it, but they also provide something else, which is they reduce the barrier to entry, they reduce the barrier of knowledge that someone, a developer, needs to have over a given system. So not only it can generate code, but I would even challenge if it's not even more important that it can also understand code. So it can help you as a user understand the application and what the application is doing. So we see a massive opportunity there to have agentic AI being kind of like your co-pilot co-architect, maybe in OutSystems case, to build software, not only faster, but also in a much easier fashion, so that you don't have to learn about all the concepts, that you can immediately jump into a system that someone else created, and you can work with that in that vibe coding approach with your side agent to help you understand and change and develop that process. So massive opportunity. Of course, it comes with some risks, particularly ungoverned vibe coding. We've seen not only the security errors that it has been introducing. So if you look into GitHub, there are some analysis of security flaws in code that is published in GitHub, and you see like a massive rise of security issues. It's not because vibe code is bad. It's just because we cannot do one without the other, right? We still need to have some of the core or fundamental practices of software engineering to make sure that the non-functional requirements are there, like security, like architecture and reusability, right? You don't want to vibe code the same thing 100 times in a different way, right? You want to vibe code, but you want to do it in a governed infrastructure that respects your architecture, that reuses the concepts and the functionality that you've had in that application or in a separate system that application needs to integrate with. So again, it's kind of like we genuinely believe that it's transforming how you build software. It also introduces some liabilities that we need to address as a software industry as a whole.
Yeah. And, I've been, obviously, I follow your posts and things you speak about on LinkedIn, and one thing, you've spoken about is, the future isn't, AI writing Python, right? But AI manipulating structured models or executable specifications. Why is structure so critical for safety, governance, and scale?
Yeah, so part of it is around this, like even the reusability. You don't want to, let's say that you enable 10 developers in your organization or 100 developers in your organization to do vibe coding. You need to do it in a controlled way so that they collaborate with each other, right? You don't get 100 human developers access to your infrastructure and let them go ungoverned, right? The same way you cannot get 100 or infinite swarms of AI agents to do that in an ungoverned fashion, right? So the structure is really about what are the reusability that you need to have in place, how are agents able but also enforced to follow some of the architectural guidelines that you have in place, some of the reusability. Let's say, how do you make sure that whenever you vibe code an application, you reuse, I don't know, the payment the payment block that you use that is already PCI compliant, that already is more than compliant and validated by your legal team, that is the way you manage credit cards, right? You want to ensure that in every software that you produce, and this is kind of like a simple example, but you have thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe to several degrees of these examples, where you need to have those reusable pieces, those composable pieces that you don't want to reinvent, that you don't want to rewrite, that it's not even cost efficient for you to rewrite with AI, right? You wouldn't want to spend or to spawn 10,000 developers to upgrade the stack across your 1,000 applications, right? You want that to be deterministic. You want that to be automatically upgraded when you do need to make that transition. So structure and models give us that, right? They give AI agents a harness on where they can operate at maximum capability, and we'll get to those abstractions in a bit,
Oh.
but where they can operate at maximum ability and capability without having to have the AI agent work at the very granular piece of code, right? And you can leverage the best of the creativity, like for instance, even getting agents to better understand the architecture, getting agents to better understand what's the outcome that you get in an application. It's much easier to get them to do that over a model, over that structure, than to do it over a million lines of code. Of course, it can do that. Of course, it can create those abstractions, but you want to have some of those guarantees in a deterministic way. You don't want to rebuild your credit card payment subsystem, or you don't want to rebuild your monitoring, security, yada yada capabilities in every piece of software that is generated through code. So that structured model, like for instance the OutSystems model, gives you that determinism and that security by design and so on, that then you can leverage with Vibe Code.
Yeah, that's interesting. And another thing you've spoken about is obviously the real barrier to AI adoption isn't accuracy but translation, right? Can you talk about the mental gap between human intent and executable logic?
Yeah. So we've been traditionally getting, for instance, business users that have a business problem, that understand the business, to communicate to developers, to architects, what their requirements are, right? And that has always been this gap of what is the outcome that I want versus how do you build this into a system, right? So you have people that can describe a business problem really well, that can even think through what could be a solution, but that don't have the system's thinking ability to how do I break this down into an architecture? How do I break this down into reusable components? What are the impacts of introducing this change in our business process throughout the rest of the workflow, throughout the rest of the business processes in the organization, right? So an intent only shows you one part of the system, which is very granular. It's kind of like the happy path through the system. But developers and architects, when they do this, they kind of like explode that into all the impacts that it has across the system, right? We go to edge cases and so on.
Oh.
This structure that we were talking about, like having a model that encodes what are the different pieces of the system, help you also understand the blast radius of that business requirement. When you have that intent, when you want to make a change, when you want to introduce a new requirement, having the graph that understands what are all the dependencies. If I change this because I have a new attribute, what across the entire systems that we have in place, what is going to be that impact? That mapping is usually still hard to have, for instance, someone that doesn't have some systems thinking kind of methodologies to be able to just work with an AI and hope that the AI is going to have that understanding. So if we elevate the abstraction to the models, the AI can be a much better help there, but it's not without that hardness, that foundational understanding of the full system that we can allow the AI to help you in understanding that impact, and that's kind of like the mental model gap, right? So one thing is kind of like the happy path, the user story that has the happy path. The other one is the architecture, how an architect, how a developer thinks of the system as a system.
Yeah. And, speaking about developers, how is AI really changing, the day-to-day role of developers, and where do organizations underestimate the new risk this introduced, but also on a developer standpoint, what do they, you've touched on, but, what do they need to really be thinking about?
Well, that is quite close to our heart here at OutSystems,
Yeah,
because uh, what I see AI is doing right now is abstracting away the code that is being produced by the AI itself, right? So we see AIs being developers producing code, changing code, understanding code, and being able to do that for you. At OutSystems, we've actually always tried to do that to a point, right? So you use models, use visual
yeah,
representations of what you want to do. So you'll see that it's quite common in the OutSystems community of developers for them to even think, for instance, I built that business rule like 5 years ago in this customer, and
yeah,
when that happened, you had an error that was pointing right, and it was checking that external service and so on. So our developers, they already think about the system in terms of the business flows, in terms of the constructs that the system has, and they've always been very much architects of the system rather than coders of the system. I think that now with agentic development, with AI basically generating a lot of the code, the role of the developer is evolving to that exact sweet spot, which is kind of like the combination of the system architect
yeah,
plus the team manager, right? So you need to assume, or you can assume, that you have a coder, a developer, but a coder, or you have a ton of them at your disposal. So what you need to think through is, okay, how can I really understand what is the outcome that I want? How do I design a system or architect a system that solves for this use case, for maybe for other use cases that we're not even foreseeing right now? And then how do I work with my agents, right? For instance, Mentor, how do I work with Mentor to
uh-huh,
help me build and encode whatever that is in the system? But the role is really being elevated to one of an architect manager, right? Where you
yeah.
orchestrate the work of these coders.
And with the role evolving, I'm interested to know your view on, what do you think is, one of the most valuable skills in this new era?
Yeah, so the system thinking, I think it's quite
Yeah,
important, right? So being able to think outside of the scope of a single application and be able to really understand the business from a business process perspective, from a system components perspective, and from not even usability, but what is going to be who are going to be the target users of this system, and what do they need? And eventually, at some point, you're going to get to some target users that are not humans. The target users are agents, right? So you
yeah,
even need to think through those scenarios to make sure that you build a system that is useful for the business, well architected for the long term, and then that you have the skill to actually break down the requirements, understand the requirements, like all the exceptions, work with AI to think through or think beyond like the use cases or the scenarios that you have top of mind. So use AI to explore the full extent of the system. And so I think that's the major skill. It's kind of like combination of systems thinking plus real empathy with the persona
cool.
that is going to be using your system.
Yeah. And, many leaders, they're worried about, shortage of talent, and also, and this is even before AI, dependency on consultancies, right? Because of the shortage of talent sometimes, So, how do you think leaders should be thinking about building that internal capability, especially now in the, AI driven world?
Yeah. So I would say to think beyond the individual project, the individual application, and think more of what is the platform that you are creating or putting in place to allow every vendor, every provider, every person in your team, to be able to operate with AI, because AI is going to be there one way or the other.
Yeah.
But how can they operate with AI on top of that platform? It's very important that you focus on defining the guardrails, defining the operating models for agentic AI to not only execute, but for instance, in terms of how you do agentic development, how do you ensure the architecture is there? Because ultimately, as I was mentioning in the beginning, AI is also going to help you do that knowledge transfer. So ultimately, you're
Yeah.
not locked into knowledge. Eventually, what you're restricted by is the lack of context, the lack of that architecture. For instance, how do you ensure that all your systems are visible, are governed, and are available for any vendor using any AI to build on top of them and to get maximum productivity on day one, even if you need to change them, right? Even if you need to bring someone else, ensure that you have the right context that is kind of like the foundation for AI development, and the right platform to ensure the governance, the all the operation that you're going to have across a large set of software components and subsystems.
And, you know, platform decisions are no longer just about productivity. And you mentioned, you know, governance, security, enterprise control. You know, what should leaders really be evaluating differently today?
So I think if we take speed out of the decision, because that is growing and growing. So
Yeah.
speed is accelerating, velocity is accelerating pretty hard at everything. I think the major decision factors go down to where do you keep leverage over different vendors, for instance. So we know that we have major vendors like OpenAI and Anthropic
Yeah.
and so on that have some of the most used LLM models.
Oh,
How do you keep leverage? Not only leverage, but how do you keep pace with that? So how do you make sure that when a new model comes along, you can upgrade it, right?
yeah.
But how do you keep leverage so that if you want to or need to switch vendor, you make sure that your systems still perform? And AI models are going to be kind of like one of the building pieces of your systems and your processes, right? How you do software development is going to rely a lot on LLM uh, generating applications for you. How you build your agents sits on top of the LLMs that do a lot of the inference for you. So getting that ability or leverage by being able to change models at will and to evolve models at will, I think that's an important decision factor. I think the other one is really on how do you manage and ensure that your data, and when I talk about data, I'm thinking about all the enterprise context that is relevant, like your systems, your architecture, your APIs, your data, your and third party agents. So how do you ensure that you have um, some sovereignty over that, right? You cannot hand it all over to these AI companies. You need to keep that and manage that and nurture that context, because that's going to be what makes you different from your
Yeah.
competitor, right? Because everyone is going to have access to any
Yeah.
LLMs. Uh, so how do you manage that? It's a big decision factor. Maybe the third one is how do you set the pillars in place to govern at scale, right? How do you maintain? How do you evolve at scale? Think a little bit long term, what it means to have 1,000 AI agents developing software and 10,000 AI agents doing tasks in your business, right? So make decisions that are a good fit for scale rather than just the
Yeah.
smaller experiments that we are doing in the very beginning of this adoption.
And, earlier in the conversation, you spoke about, there's this growing narrative about, the death of SaaS, right? And, that AI will allow enterprises to build everything themselves. What's your opinion on that? Is that realistic, or is SaaS about to evolve rather than
Yeah,
actually disappear?
yeah. So I think I touched on that a little bit in the beginning of our
Yeah,
conversation. Um, Ultimately, I don't see that companies are going to build any software just because they can, right?
yeah,
You're going to do it, and if there is ROI, if you look actually, if you look into some numbers,
mm,
SaaS, software as a service, usually represents 10 to 15% maybe of the operational costs of an organization on average.
yeah,
uh, if you want to optimize, why not optimize the other 85 to
yeah,
90% of your business, right? So,
yeah,
as a CIO, I would focus my efforts there. I think we will still value a lot the risk-free aspect of standard software, and what it gives us. So there are still value in software that has some encoded business rules and compliance, right? That I don't want to do myself. For instance, invoicing, you need to be compliant to
yeah,
the country regulation.
yes,
Why would I want to buy that risk for my
mm,
own company? So I think ultimately, what software you build is a business decision. It's not a technology decision. Now, uh, it's going to be much easier to balance. For instance, if I'm talking about software that has, I only use 10% or 20% off, and I'm paying for the full 100%.
yeah,
Maybe that's now is that equation has changed, and I'm much better off uh, building those 20% exactly that I need right now. Um, I'm still going to be able to govern it, to manage it, to maintain it at a good pace, right? So you get kind of like the best of the flexibility of doing just what you need, plus kind of like the risk free aspect, because it's a much more contained use case. I think it's not the death of SaaS or the SaaS apocalypse.
yeah,
Uh, it's really on how we make these decisions to support our business goals.
yeah. And, as a final question, and then this is probably something you're already doing, when advising a CEO in this current kind of market, what's one or two decisions you think they need to get right in the next kind of 18 to 24 months? Because if it'll be very hard to undo later. Obviously, AI is evolving and changing, like you've touched, but,
Mhm.
what do you think are some key things that are non-negotiable?
Yeah. So I think you need to assume that AI is evolving at a really really fast rate, maybe even faster than what we are
Yeah,
easily able to absorb. So I think one of the core decisions is around how you manage and own your enterprise context, how you design, consolidate your all the different pieces of your data, of your systems of action, like the APIs, the services, and so on. How do you consolidate and you own that, and you get it ready for AI to operate on top of. So in the past, we've talked about metadata for analytic systems to be able to operate on top of. Now it's your business that is going to operate on top of that metadata, of that enterprise context of the systems that you have. So thinking in platform, making a decision on how am I going to set up this platform where AI can then operate on top of very easily. Um, and I think that also brings us to the other aspect of this, which is this context, this all these systems, data, applications that you have. They need to you need to make decisions on architecture over speed, or governance over speed, right? It's going to be easier and easier and easier to build something. How do you ensure that everything that you build, one, you can make a good decision on whether it makes sense to build it or not? But then, if you are going to build it, how do you ensure that it sits within this architecture that you can manage, that you can govern, that you can keep on evolving? So, given speed, what I need to really be concerned as a CIO is the architecture of my system, of my business. So I would say those are the two that are really important to take right
Yeah.
now, unless if you don't do it, you kind of like go in the wrong path and
Yeah.
face some big challenges ahead.
Yeah. Great. Well, I appreciate you speaking to me, Gonzalo. It was great to hear your insights, hear what you're kind of seeing. Obviously, with the OutSystems platform, there's some great things happening, and I'm interested to see how things evolve and what will come at one and things like that. So I really appreciate you spending time to speak to me, and as things evolve, maybe we speak again in the future as well.
Sure. I mean, these are, I would say, the most exciting times in
Yeah.
our industry. We've never had this level of opportunity. So, and things are changing really fast. So let's talk in 3 months and maybe
Yeah. I think there's a whole other
a lot
conversation,
more.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah. And I think even just from, if I go back to with Asian Workbench and things like that the OutSystems platform has released, just the customer side and even the developer community kind of, there's all these agentic badges and things going around on LinkedIn, and there's a real hype and buzz and interest in it, right? So it's definitely got everyone's attention, and everyone's following these topics
Yeah.
really, really on a daily basis. And obviously people in your community are following, okay, what's coming next from the platform. So it's a real interesting time.
Yeah. And I mean, our community is kind of like, it's really one of the reasons I came back.
Yeah.
When I was presenting at one last year, I was looking at that crowd, and
Yeah.
it's really my second family, right?
Yeah.
So, and I always felt that this is really what we were here for.
Yeah.
We are here to elevate the work of these people and we can do it much better, much faster now with AI, and still nurture kind of like the creativity, the craftsmanship that these developers have. So it's really exciting time for us all.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, let's keep in touch, and we'll definitely speak again in the future for sure.
Sure thing. Great to
Thanks,
speak to you.
Gonzalo.